Oh my gosh. First of all, I have to say it out loud. I was fangirling Gabby. I was never a sprinter because I'm 5 feet, nothing, but I was a mid-runner. And to see that talent here is exceptional. So I don't know, she's like, stay later, but I need a pick or something. As well as I'm fangirling these two right here because we have Fernando Machado, who's the CMO of Activision, you just heard him speak, as well as Brendan Donohue, the president of 2K NBA League, and arguably two of the most important people in the gaming and esports industry today. You just heard from Fernando, how big and how impactful gaming is and esports is, and hopefully you knew that before, but if you didn't, and we hope that session and this session continues to inspire you to either lean in more to the marketplace, but also to lean in for the first time. We're all here to help you get there. If you don't feel like you're an expert, I would certainly have them engage with you or us engage with you to help you navigate that. The other thing that we're here to talk about, the three of us today, we hope at the end of the session you will get a good idea. Of course, the scale. Fernando did a great job talking about scale, but also the importance of authenticity and community and getting the creative right in the gaming industry. If you don't get the authenticity, if you don't get the community, and you don't get the don't get the creative right in the industry, it won't be good. But when you do, it will be great. And so the payoff is really worth it. All right, nerd alert, I do have cards with zip ties. Zip ties are the best thing ever, I have to say. All right, so the three of us have something in common I want to talk about for a minute. We all moved from these companies, and you referenced it a little bit in your presentation, Fernando. I moved from WPP and Ford to a gaming ad tech company. You moved from Burger King, other brands, Unilever, into one of the world's most significant gaming companies, and you moved from the NBA, which you've had an incredible career, to NBA 2K League. So here's the question: why?
I can go first. I was super inspired. You mentioned Gabby earlier, how she got into wanting to be into neurology, and because of her younger brother with autism. I will tell you my story. I was obviously in the NBA now for 25 years, and while that was going on, when my 16-year-old son turned 6, my wife got us gaming chairs. And so that became our way of connecting, and he has autism and actually has some special needs, so he couldn't compete on the athletic field as much, so gaming became his competition outlet. And that became like no different than like my dad would take me to a Mets game when I was a kid, and we still do that. Our place to connect was playing games, and you said it perfectly. It is so. When we grew up, it was an isolated activity. It is so communal, and so that's just one example of like kind of how it brought my two worlds together, frankly.
Yeah, I wanted to have an experience I always wanted to have an experience in something that was digitally native. I love the idea of entertainment, of working in entertainment, and I was always a big fan of gaming. So when the opportunity came and I felt the time was right, after a little bit over 7 years on RBI, I had to try it, and I always try to put myself in a position that I'm learning or that I'm having like a steep learning curve. So changing from Unilever to RBI was a huge change, and now another one, and I'm having fun, I think that we have great people in the industry, not just on Activision Blizzard, and it's a really fun industry to be in.
For sure, and I think gaming also brings the most powerful combination of technology and creativity out of any other marketing channel, content channel, etc. in order to be really good at this industry, you have to have both sides of the equation down pat, so to speak. So gaming as an industry is misunderstood, and your presentation, if there's new people, maybe they missed it, but you did an incredible job, Fernando, of highlighting how big gaming is, what the metrics are, et cetera. I think we have to beat the drum a lot more in order for people to understand those metrics, on the tip of their tongue all the time. Give us one statistic, maybe out of your presentation, but Brendan, also from you, give us one statistic. If they were to walk out of here today, what's the most powerful statistic that you think exemplifies the opportunity in gaming today? And then think 3 to 5 years in advance from now. What's another statistic you think 3 to 5 years from now will be even more of an opportunity from the gaming industry? So 1 today, 3 to 5 from now. What would that be? Yeah,
you just spent a lot of time doing it, so you cheated. But I would say that present and future is engagement level. Our average 2K League fan engages with the game 30 hours a week.
30, not 3.
Just unheard of engagement. It's so that's probably present. And then I'd say future is, and this is where the benefit of both of us having pretty significant organizations behind our esports efforts, is that when we look at the stats of season ticket holders across the NBA, 44% of them engage with 2K. So I think that speaks to this audience and their buying power currently and in the future. So those are just two of the statistics I think are eye-opening.
In 3 to 5 years. Like 3 to 5 years from now, what do you think the power statistic would be if you could extrapolate your business out, knowing the growth plans that you have in place, for example?
I think this is where we invest in data and analytics around our partnerships. I think in 3 to 5 years, I want to see the impact for our current partners on their future business, because right now we have these 18 to 30-year-olds who are creating their buying habits for the future. And so, we think that is going to have significant stickiness because they're so deeply engaged. That stickiness they're creating now with brands currently, that has beyond 3 to 5 years impact.
Amazing.
Yeah, to me, just building on what you said, I think that on the now, it's all about the number of people that play and the amount of time they play. You know what I mean? And I look at the past, and those numbers were much smaller, right? In terms of the number of people who play, it was still I'm talking 20, 30 years ago, still relatively niche. The time that they play, I don't think we even measure because they were playing individually each game. And today is basically everyone and spending more time either playing or watching than they do in other social media channels, which usually is where most people spend their time. To me, it's very hard to think about what is going to be the key statistic in 3 to 5 years, because I think the industry is evolving so much, and I'm trying and the team's trying to experiment so much in different fronts, right? That I imagine that you will have streamers that will become globally popular beyond people that play the game. To a much bigger level. Today, if I say, do you know who Dr. Disrespect is? Not everyone knows, but I think we are getting to a point where everyone will know. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it will be a massive celebrity, just like a soccer player or a basketball player is. I think that games will continue to evolve to be completely always on. Historically, I try to behave really well in October and November to get the new Mario for Christmas at my house when I was a kid. That thing will stop, I think. It will be always on. Mario will be a platform, and they are going to get content throughout the year. It's almost like if Netflix launched all their movies in the same month, right? That's not how it works. You spread content across the year. So, so I think that will only grow. I think that we are not even close to reaching the saturation point in gaming.
That's great. And just to highlight, if you're new to the gaming industry, some of the sources that you can follow up with later, the ESA, the Entertainment Software Association, Limelight. Limelight does a comparison of time spent gaming versus other channels like linear TV, like streaming video, YouGov does a great job with gaming. ComScore's done an annual report. Some of those need to do a better job integrating the content, because you made the point before, we track all the people who watch video. We track people who watch TV. We track people who are on social media, but go find a report that then also tracks in those same mainstream measurement sources, gaming, time spent with gaming. We have a ways to go in getting the stats right in the industry so that they're consistent and they can be available to marketers for you to make decisions and for us to make decisions. So I think that's an important thing. That's a platform I've been beating the drum on for the last year or so. So speaking of ComScore, ComScore has been a good partner of ours, and they've been actually pretty active in the gaming industry over the last few years. They launched a nice, significant study recognizing the gaming and esports. We've actually done 15 ComScore brand lift studies, double-digit point lift, and mobile ad recall likability of the sponsorship of the game. The reason I bring that up is because of something you said in terms of just slapping the logo in the game or putting ads in places where they shouldn't show up. And this one's for you, Brendan, because I know you guys in your work have worked on putting ads inside of the environment, just like they would show up in a stadium environment in real life. Can you talk a bit about the work you're doing there and kind of where you are at in terms of the maturity level of that work at NBA 2K League?
Sure. Integration is super important. And by the way, Heinz, that was brilliant.
It was brilliant.
I would say, for one, we have a little bit of an advantage given the fact that when you play 2K, it's expected to see courtside signage or things of that nature. Like, that's not being forced into in an organic way. So we do have an advantage that way. But I would say that I think what we've had to learn is, living inside the big NBA, is we have to be unusually pliable. Because we're constantly listening, constantly getting it. Like you mentioned, this is a highly engaged audience, and our feedback loop is constant. And you have to parse through that, but there's a lot of learning. So as a result, this season is our 5th year. We've made significant changes to our league because of what the players in the community is telling us. So we all of a sudden, 5-on-5 was what we did, and all of a sudden we integrated 3v3 because, frankly, there's a massive, we didn't realize how distinct they were. And so we now have 3v3 as part of our league. And we also, credit to, frankly, learning from the broader esports world, this year we have open qualifiers where, and by the way, telling our NBA teams, yeah, these people in the community can now win money that you were going to win previously. It's possible. That was a hard conversation to have, but they get it. They understand that it's bigger than that. It's important for us to create this bigger ecosystem and to engage the wider part of the funnel to the league. So I would say, in terms of that's what we're learning, and and I would say, we have to be more pliable in our early years to keep making adjustments and frankly listen.
How much did the 3v3 expand your audience reach percentage?
So to put it in perspective, the highest level of play, about 10% of players play 5v5 at the highest level against 9 other human beings. 3v3, more than half of the player community is playing 3v3. So, and actually it also opened up the door to organically getting influencers more involved in the league, because the influencers are playing a lot of 3v3. It's a little more casual, but it's one where they can play and still talk to their audience and engage while they're streaming. So all of a sudden we have now we're bringing 3v3 influencers onto our stage as part of our events, and I think we're branching into new audiences.
And wait, one more follow-up question. When we were talking about that before, you were talking about, before the league started, your sponsorship, sales at the NBA was focused obviously in real life, opportunities. And now you have this in real life plus digital, this hybrid opportunity. Mm-hmm. And so you're representing both of those opportunities at the same time, which is a change for your organization.
Yeah, but what I would say that I think we're all figuring out together is that esports has so many ownable opportunities for partners. Because frankly, it is pliable. We are creating new things. All of a sudden we created 3v3, And so we were in a broader conversation with Coinbase. And Coinbase was like, oh, actually, we want to be owning innovation. And like this new 3v3 mode is you guys being innovative. We want to own that portion of your competition. So I think I think there's so many, and I will also say our players, and I think you guys have the same experience, our players they're content creators before they even get to the league. So it's so organic for them to be a part of content and sponsor content that they ask to be a part of it.
So one more question, and then I have a couple for Fernando. You said that your games are E for everyone, and your audience age is what? What is the average age? It's 17-year-old or no?
It actually skews a little older than what people might think.
Right.
I'd say 18 to 34.
18 to 34, and so it's much easier for you to talk to, the brands that are getting there versus maybe people get excited about things like Roblox. I love Roblox. I think it's very inspirational, but it skews very young. But yours doesn't. Yours skews audiences with purchasing power, which is good. Awesome. I love it. Let's switch to another topic, community, because you've got some amazing experience behind you related to community. And when we were prepping for this, you told us a story about opening up markets, I believe in Brazil, for Unilever, and the lesson you learned and the idea of being a foreigner. Can you talk a bit about that story and how that applies to inspiring the marketers here in the room about how they need to think about getting into the gaming industry?
That's a funny one. I hope I don't offend any one of my stories.
It's a good one, though.
So I was brand manager for Unilever, and I was responsible for launching one or two brands of household cleaning in Brazil. But the center of innovation for household cleaning was in Argentina. So I was the only Brazilian working on that project to launch the brands in Brazil. And I was based in Brazil. And I used to go to Argentina like 2-3 times a month to work with the team. And we developed the mix. We tested on the surfaces because we need to clean, right? In Brazil and all that good stuff. So when we started to do the advertising work to brief the agents and this and that, and the agency was Argentinian, amazing agency. But all the ideas in the beginning that would come, they would all involve Carnival, yeah? As a Brazilian, I was like, oh shit, how do I explain to these guys that they will really sound and look like super gringo in Brazil with what they think we like, and you know what I mean? So with gaming, and you think where is he going with that, right? But with gaming, and not just with gaming, I always try to think about am I doing the same thing that they were doing back then to me? Am I coming across as the gringo in Carnival? Because you can spot a gringo in Carnival in Rio from distance. You know exactly who or she is. Ask me for tips about how not to do that later on. And it's the same with gaming. If you do that, you will struggle big time, because the community will not tolerate that approach. So you really need to understand the community, what makes people tick, what they're looking for, what's the language, who they are, what are the things they like, they don't like, the barriers, the triggers, and all that good stuff. And that's why I think it's important to partner with people who are living and breathing that every day. We can help, because we have teams of people who totally get that stuff. And we can really help you come across authentic. Many times, and authentic to me is the right word. I was saying about how can we evolve advertising within gaming, but when you have an ad showing up on NBA 2K, that's authentic because when you go to a game, that's what you see, right? So it helps the authenticity of the game if you have the right sponsor there instead of some random thing that people are going to look at and think well, that's not really a sponsor from the NBA, you know what I mean? So it helps with authenticity. So anyway, talk to us, talk to people who know the games because we can help.
So let's talk about authenticity as it relates to creative. At Frameplay, we put ads intrinsically into the game itself, and so when you do that, you're putting an ad into the creative design, into the environment. You can't mess around. You have to get it right. So talk about authenticity and creative, and you showed a couple of examples, and those are obviously pretty big marketing campaigns, but even on the smallest level, you got to get it right.
I think that I gave you an example that was not even in gaming, but I think it kind of applies. I was at Disney with my family 2-3 weeks ago, and I was dying to see the new Star Wars space, right? So when we got to the Star Wars space, they had this whole droid thing for Coca-Cola, but it's not written Coca-Cola, it's written in like alien language, whatever that means. You know what I'm saying? Like, but you can tell it's Coke, right? And even though and it was dusted, scratched, and if I know it's an ad, and I know that Coke paid for that, like it felt really authentic to me. Yeah. So that's why when we were talking, when we had our Zoom call, and we were talking about the product, one of the first things I asked was like, when you do out of home, inside of the game, how do you treat light? How do you treat like, because it cannot look like suddenly like you're playing Call of Duty and then you have this stark Mountain Dew like that appears, like it needs to be part of that environment. Like if you are in a shooting game in the desert, it should be dusted. It should be, like it should not be glossy. Because of authenticity. It all boils down to that.
Yeah, and the other thing we talked about in both environments, if you're sitting in a stadium just like you're sitting now, you're static, and your environment is not moving. But when you're in a game, the perspective changes constantly. There's depth, there's lighting. The experience constantly changes, and that's related to the game engine itself, the game engine mechanics, and when you think about advertising inside the game versus ads around or next to the game, both are powerful. Ads inside of the game, you have to think about the fact that that's constantly moving, and what is the environment? How do you consider all of those things? And you do have to work with companies who know what they're doing. You have to do that, because the worst thing for your brand is to align yourself with companies that don't have deep experience with that.
Yeah, I'd say too, and for us, authenticity is a little bit easier because, frankly, if someone comes into our studio and watches a game live, oftentimes we hear, it's just like being in a regular game. Like, we get that constantly. But what I would say, and this is where I would give a lot of credit to the marketers in the room, that they're being incredibly creative at driving their authentic message through us. So I'll give you a perfect example. You'll hear from Jeff DeLine from the Mets in a minute. But years ago, he was at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. They had IBM Watson was their GM. IBM Watson was analyzing data across our tryout process and the 60 different data points across 72,000 players, and they used IBM Watson to be their GM, which you can't get much more authentic than that. And then even when COVID first hit, AT&T jumped up for us and said our players all of a sudden were disconnected. They were all over the country. They were putting their phones in our players' hands to create content because they couldn't otherwise. And so I think that to me, I think brands frankly are. 5 years ago when we started, it was so much about education. I think now the brands are so much more sophisticated, understanding okay, we see the opportunity now. We see how frankly, our fans benefit the bold. If you're willing to be bold and try some new and fun things, one, we're up for it. And I think our fans, the more outrageous, the better.
I love that. Okay, now the topic nobody likes to talk about except for me, measurement. Measurement is what helps people understand, how did my marketing investment work? And should I do it again? At the end of the day, it is an investment. It's a big investment when you're putting dollars into the creative development and the media, et cetera. And so at Frameplay, we actually just launched intrinsic time in view, which is a in-game viewability duration calculation, and that's a hard thing to do when the environment's moving around and you have depth and ratio and skew and lighting and things like that. You need to have good tech. But beyond that, how do you offer measurement concepts? Are they the same as other web marketing or TV measurement approaches, or are there things that are different when it comes to gaming that come to mind that you talk about?
I think it's somewhat similar. It happens that we may have more data, because we can track lots of things that maybe if you're investing in advertising, it's like layers until the purchase, if it's CPG and this and that. And we have a lot of data at our fingertips. I think it really depends on what's your objective too, right? If your objective is sales, we can do A/B testing. We can do lots of things that will help us get you the evidence that you need on whether the campaign is working or not. I think that measurement to us, I think that to the whole industry is important, because I want to be creating partnerships that are long-term partnerships.
That's right.
You know, with advertisers, with brands, with other franchises, and I truly believe on finding the sweet spot where is to their advantage and to our advantage. If it's just to our advantage, next year the other brand is not going to come back again. You know what I'm saying? So I think that we are constantly working together to make sure that we understand what we're trying to achieve, put measurement behind that, and pushing so that you are successful in that. It's not just about the money, right? I mean, else we need to start again from scratch next year. And I think that if you're building credibility and a win-win scenario, it becomes easier for us.
Yeah, and I would just say, I mean, that's where I think we're really fortunate to live inside the NBA offices and have the NBA partner management team activating our partnerships and measuring them like they would other partnerships. And I would say too that we create marketing partnerships. We're not just selling signage. Signage is a spoke in a much bigger wheel. And so I think that that's really where it's about the authenticity. It's about it's about really adding value to the experience. And that's where I think you have exponential, impact on your partnership dollars.
I love that you both just said that, because the assumption always when I meet somebody for the first time and talk to them about gaming is they can't have their cake and eat it too, and they absolutely can. And that's the fun thing. Okay, here's the number one thing we get asked about, and you might too. Which platform is the power platform of the gaming future? Console, PC, or mobile? You kind of said a little bit, and I know it depends, so tell us why, if it does depend.
I think it depends on the game, to be honest with you. A game like World of Warcraft, I think that at some point we just launched a version of World of Warcraft. It's not a version, it's like a World of Warcraft franchise game in mobile. But because of the size of the glass, I think you always have some limitations. It's not even the power of processing the information. I think that cell phone today, I think my iPhone is like a PS4 in terms of processing power. So it's not about that. It's just about, when I play on my PC, I have a screen that's almost the size of, no, it's not, but it's very large, it's curved. And if you look at esports competitions, the guys have really strong machine, mouse, screen. So it's more about what is the best equipment to play that certain game. And I think that there will be a lot of cross-play, right? I mean, you can play on console, you can continue on PC, you can continue on mobile. But I think that certain games may lend themselves better or have an epicenter in one platform just because of the nature of the game.
Yeah, and I would say, 2K for the most part is natively console, and who knows where that goes in 5 and 10 years. But right now that's the case. But we are super focused on mobile for a bunch of different reasons. Take-Two, which owns 2K, just invested a significant billions of dollars into a mobile company. And how we think about mobile right now is, frankly, through consumption. And so, we're thinking about how does our broadcast look on an iPhone? And that's the way we think about mobile as well. Because, frankly, what works on a TV screen may not work when I'm watching it on my phone. So I think that's where we have to be thoughtful about just how we think about mobile.
That's great. It looks like we're almost out of time. Do we have time for questions? No time for questions. Sorry. But if you have questions, grab us afterwards, and that would be great. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you.
you.